college football through week 4. I don't even know what to do with my hands, Grant. It was electric, so much overtime. And unfortunately, I missed a lot of it, which leads me into my first story for this episode. But Grant, first of all, how are you doing, brother?
I'm doing phenomenal. I had one of my favorite days of the fall every year is going to the Open Jackets practice, and got to do that this morning. So I'll talk a little bit about that later, but I want to hear the story. You gave me a cliffhanger, man.
Yeah,
on the edge of my seat.
I saw the pictures from training camp. The CBJs looked electric. I saw the tweet. Looked like packed house. Definitely probably an emotional day. That opening game is going to be, I can't wait to tune into that. But let me tell you my story. I was at Disneyland this weekend. The only purpose being spreading the love of hard hat hockey and spreading, our hockey joy across the nation with Mickey and Goofy alike and Donald Duck. Grant, I saw a fair amount of good looking jerseys, right? I saw an old school Boston Bruins Brad Marchand looked really nice. I saw a couple throwback Mighty Ducks jerseys. I saw a retrofitted Anaheim Ducks jacket going in, those old school like Coho jackets. Looked real sharp. And then out of nowhere, in front of the Incredicoaster, the Incredibles ride, I saw a Colorado Avalanche t-shirt on a lady, and it was specifically Nathan McKinnon's number on the back.
Okay.
Grant, there's a fair amount of hockey fans around the country, and especially as the NHL is definitely expanding, but still compared to the general population, it's nowhere near like the NFL.
Oh, so
yeah. We're passing each other by. I had just purchased my first beer for the day, just rode the Incredicoaster, and I just yelled out, "Hey, go Avs," to this lady, assuming there's no other Colorado Avalanche fan in this park for the day. She's going to know exactly what wavelength I'm on, and she's going to respond with a "Go Avs" in return. Grant, she looked at me like I was an alien, like I was like foreign territory.
Okay.
She had no idea what I was referring to as she wore the shirt. I was so disappointed. I'm sitting there wondering, does she even know what she's wearing? Was this just like a gift, from like an uncle? Just a blind pickup at a thrift store.
Goodwill pickup.
We liked the logo. Like it's like the Yankees logo, except not as iconic. You know what I mean? I was very upset.
So there was she didn't even give like a what's going on. It was just, that was the end of the interaction.
Yeah, like made eye contact, just a very bizarre look. Like, why would you say "Go Avs" to me as she was wearing an Avs shirt? So pretty unbelievable.
Sometimes we got to remind ourselves that, there's a huge swath of people out there that not only just don't even like or follow hockey, but like aren't even into sports really.
That's a good point.
And sometimes merchandise will find their way to them.
It's just such a specific. It's such a specific brand, and McKinnon, as you've got to know what you're wearing when you're wearing that kind of shirt. You're not just rocking a generic Yankees hat.
I had a hockey memorabilia interaction, I believe Friday. Got done from work, went down to, I have a small grocery store like at the end of my street, which is like awesome. I walked down there to get a case of beer to enjoy on like a Friday evening. And I saw an older gentleman wearing a Columbus Chill jersey, and it was like old.
Throwback.
Yeah. And I don't know if you're familiar with like the Chill branding, but it was like black, white, and gray. They were the East Coast League team here in Columbus before the Jackets got here. Sharp jersey. And I had to tell him, I was like, "Sir, that is an amazing jersey you have." And I was then blown away, but this man sounded like he was like a R&B DJ in like the 80s. Like he had some like soul and some smoothness to his voice. And he thanked me, and I'm not sure. I think I was wearing a Crew jersey, actually, oddly enough. So then we talked like Columbus sports for just a moment. But I was blown away. You don't see a lot of old Chill stuff that is like still from the 90s, because like they repurpose it, and you see a decent amount of the stuff that's like out there is like, okay, that's pretty new. They're getting in on the retro stuff. This you could tell like was in the old Taft Coliseum back in the 90s.
Well, safe to say, Grant, I like your interaction better than mine. So let's get right into this episode. For the sake of time today, we have so much to get to. All training camps have officially kicked off, and there is an abundance of news across the league. Because of that, we have made the decision today. Our preseason primers will consist of the Vegas Golden Knights and the Seattle Kraken. We've officially shifted the Calgary Flames to next weekend. So stay tuned for that hot take, literally the Flames. But it's stock market tips are coming at you right now. They are sponsored by Roseville Skate Town, Northern California's premier home for men's league hockey at all levels. Sign up today and receive your complimentary skate sharpening and your free case of Moosehead Lager for your men's league heroes.
Oh, that's sharp.
Stock market. Grant, I'm buying and selling the same stock. That's a confusing take, but they have different perspectives. If you are an NHL owner or some sort of investor in any NHL franchise, this stock tip is for you. You should buy an NHL expansion, and it's relevant. Grant, did you know that it costs $500 million for expansion fees for a new team to come into the league? Seattle cost over $650. So quite a hefty check to write that goes to Gary Bettman and company, all the owners alike. And this is relevant this week. They met to discuss the expansion of the league from 32 teams to 34. And they want to take that further to 36. It is widely known that the first two cities to take this to 34 teams would be Houston, Texas, and Atlanta, Georgia. Grant, we've tried it 2 times already. Let's go back for a third time. Atlanta clearly loves their hockey teams.
The more I learn about the Thrashers, the more I kind of think it could work. But I'm not a stakeholder, I'm not the one making the moves, but I there's a little bit more there than I think we kind of give them credit for. And Atlanta's grown and changed a lot since they left. So again, I kind of like having this conversation. It wouldn't be like the first city I would pick, but I also I'm not a rich person with, $600 million. So I don't, if some other rich person wants to make that move, then by all means.
I don't, Atlanta is a nice town. I've been there. There's a lot of great areas. Atlanta's huge. So it definitely has the population to support it.
And then the Braves left downtown too, which I think kind of creates like a pocket.
And that franchise, that fan base has exploded over the last decade.
Soccer's big down there too. That soccer expansion team, which I was skeptical of that back in those 2000s. It was announced in 2015, but they didn't start playing until 2017. I didn't think that would catch on, and it's huge.
Yeah, nice stadium as well. But my only thing here is I wish they would consider a more northern city, something that could potentially, theoretically, support hockey, seeing as Atlanta's already had 2 shots at this, like a Milwaukee. I realize it's a stone throw away from Chicago, or even a Boise, Idaho. Boise is a exploding city right now. I happen to be following the Boise State Broncos pretty closely this year. Big fan of their new head coach, Stevenson. They should have beat Oregon, for the record. Anyways, I digress.
No, that's our little bit of college football. Hartford, dude. I think they got to go back to Hartford.
I'm not opposed to it.
Yeah.
I know Mr. Jensen, who was on this show, would have really appreciated that.
The one that's always interesting is Hamilton, Ontario. Is always brought up, but it's almost too close to Toronto. Here's the thing. Toronto could support 2 teams. I know the Leafs would never let it happen, but if you think of New York City has essentially 3 teams with the Devils in there, really. I mean, that's all in the same metroplex. LA and Anaheim are somewhat close. It's obviously not the same city, but it's very close. You could put a team in Hamilton and it would kill. You could put another team in Toronto, it would probably kill.
Yeah, to that point though, the articles that I've been reading, seems to be 0 to limited interest in expanding to another Canadian team for a multitude of reasons. It seems that the value of the American dollar being one of the bigger priorities and getting the most bang for their buck from an ownership.
Sure. I get that. I don't know. Like I get it. It's all fine. The expansion is one of those things that it is purely business, and maybe that's not always the best.
Grant, let me tell you the stock that I'm selling.
Yeah.
It's also the NHL expansion. So again, it's all perspective. If you're in any way connected to the ownership groups, you want to buy NHL expansion. Here's why I'm selling NHL expansion. We were just at 30 teams a couple years ago. And then we expanded into Vegas and we expanded into Seattle. Now we're at 32. That already seemed like a huge jump. Okay. Now we're talking about 34 and even beyond that to 36. To me, that seems like you are diluting a talent pool that cannot support 32 teams as it is. So I think scheduling would suffer.
Scheduling is the one that weirds me out. Because you either spread it out even more, or you go like super regional, where it's like, yeah, you might not play every team every year, but you're going to play your rivals like 5 times.
It's just a lot. There's no other league in America that supports that many teams, at least that I can think of. And
everyone's usually around 32 or 30. I think maybe that's the appeal though. Is they're like, we can be that league that, and if and when the NHL makes that move to 36. Then the NBA is going to make that move. I wouldn't probably the MLB. The MLB wants to expand. The MLB wants to go to like Nashville. They've talked about it. It's one of those things that like one organization and all these owners own like multiple teams and other stuff. They all know each other. The sponsors, the corporate interest people, the TV networks. They're all in the same pot. They compete against each other to a degree, but it's a lot of overlap. So, should more expansion take place, my only hope is that we don't lessen or cheapen the value of the NHL to make a buck. And that's all I'll say on that. Well, I think it depends on like what define lessen it. Like the quality of play diminishes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, I think you'd be surprised with how little you would notice that.
True. And I also wonder, we're already, there's some teams in the league that can't support a consistent fan base. Now, we have seen that problem correct itself more and more over the past couple of years with the growth of the NHL.
They expand the playoffs and
the popularity of the game has only grown. So that's kind of correct stuff. But there are some markets that struggle to sell out every single night. And now we're asking the league to support even more. It seems like a tall order to me. So
one thing Trent and I were talking about off mic was hockey is unique. I would say I'd put it up there almost with soccer, where maybe not to that degree, but it's similar in the way that it's played in a lot of different areas of the world. So the talent pool, you do have a more robust talent pool to dip into as opposed to say like American football. So I think, there are bad teams that struggle to fill like a good roster, and I would put the Jackets kind of up there too. But, if you have a good front office and, some creative scouting, you can find a way to build a good team. And I think the talent level would be able to sustain itself if enough teams make like good decisions and like more young guys get an opportunity. There's a lot of hockey out there. College hockey's growing exponentially. Like it's not the same kind of setup that it was like 20 years ago, where teams were coming in and basically just getting like AHL journeymen.
Fair enough
to fill the team.
Grant, give me your stock tips, and then we'll move on to transactions here quickly.
I got one. I'm buying the city of Columbus. Just this is a cop out, but I mentioned it at the front end, dude. The training camp, the open practice, one of my favorite times of the year. They started doing this back in like 2018, 2019. Back then, you could stroll in just right when the doors open, find a seat, grab a coffee from Tim Hortons. I don't know if you know this. There's a Tim Hortons attached to Nationwide Arena.
Dude, Tim Hortons donuts are legendary. Oh,
yeah, so you grab a coffee and a donut, sit in there, and you would watch a John Tortorella practice, which is basically just those guys. It was all conditioning. They did very little hockey stuff. They basically were just running them. But today was a scrimmage, and it was packed. I got a little late. I went to mass before doors unlocked at 10:30. I think I would have had to have been in line at like 8:30 to get a decent spot. It was packed. I rolled in there 10 minutes after the doors unlocked, and it was packed. So I stood, been in the practice arena enough times, kind of knew where to find some space and stand around, and saw the guys doing open scrimmage, and they had kind of the in-arena announcer. His name's Mike Todd. He did a great job of kind of hosting it for a little bit, created some pomp and circumstances, which is cool. They played a lot of music. The process has like grown a lot to what it used to be, which was basically just like they'd open the doors and just kind of let you go in there. It felt like more like an event, and saw some of the young guys get some ice time. So I just want to buy the city of Columbus basically really showing out for a morning practice. Again, we're all grieving and handling kind of the adversity that the whole hockey community here in Columbus is still feeling. And I think today was a really great moment for all of us to come together. It felt a little cathartic in the practice arena. So
I bet, man. I wish I was there with you. What stock you selling?
Ooh, you asked me too early. I'm holding on to everything. I'm not selling anything this week.
Okay. That sounds good. Well, speaking of Columbus, Grant, my first stop on the train station, JVR, James Van Riemsdyk, comes over last year from Boston, signs a 1-year by $900,000 deal with the Columbus Blue Jackets. I got to be honest with you. I thought Boston was going to re-sign him. Since we've discovered they've got a little more cap. They've got some cap issues of their own to figure out before they go off and sign a guy like JVR for under $1 million. So good for him to find a home. I'm glad to see him play again. I'm glad to see him play. I can't wait to see him play for this franchise. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. I don't think they're done, Grant. I think they're going to add one more.
No, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. Don kind of alluded to this a little bit. Don Waddell has said they are still looking for some guys. Big picture, the cap floor, $65 million. We're still under that. I think the negotiations with the Players Association and the league are still kind of ongoing to try to get some sort of waiver to say, like, considering the circumstances, the Jackets aren't trying to screw up the system. They're trying to do what they can. And I think JVR is a guy who I imagine they were probably looking at him even before, Johnny passed away, but it's a great move. I think a little bit of a veteran presence on the wing, a guy that can play the power play, and give some of these young guys. I'm always a little hesitant to be like, oh, the veteran presence going to help these young guys learn, because I think everyone's a pro, but you're looking at the roster and it was like very young in a way that maybe isn't fair to the young guys to a certain point, where it's like, okay, not everyone has to shoulder every big minute. Like, we can bring in a guy like JVR that knows what it takes to win. It has a very interesting skill. I mean, he's a power forward, gets in front of the net. Like, you need a guy like that. Every team needs a guy like that. And that's kind of specialized in a way that I think is going to help the Jackets. And again, we're not a team that's competing for the cup or even a playoff spot, but you still want, good hockey. You still want pucks in the net. You still want, progress being made. And you need a guy that can do that.
He is. I think he's going to get along really well with Boone Jenner. He's got a unique skill set, like you said. He played on Boston's Power Play 1 last year for at least a stint of time I know of. So there's no question he could step right in and ramp up Columbus's power play right away. You stick his body in front of the net. He's a big guy. He's a loved guy. His underlying numbers with the puck, possession numbers, are great, even at his age. So, yeah, this is a great move. I still think, man, I'm a betting man. I think Shattenkirk. I look out. I'm going to call it now.
I will say they have mentioned they're looking more at like not the blue line. It's what I'm hearing. But I don't hate where your head's at.
All right.
Jack Johnson today looked great, by the way.
Oh, tell him I miss him. Tell him I miss him.
He changed. He's got a different number. He was number 7 when he was here, and now Sean Corrali has that, so he's wearing 3. It took a little minute.
Little tangent here on Jack. Jack, I feel like, gives a lot of mercy to people. He's an absolute truck of a human being. And I feel like he is in positions to absolutely plant people if he wanted to, more than he does. And I think he takes a lot of mercy on a lot of guys out there. Something I've noticed.
It's fascinating you say that, because that was almost when I'm not always say biggest criticism of him when he was here last time, but he is such a big body that I was like, dude, I just want him to like take guys out a little bit. But he especially when he was originally here in Columbus back in like 2011, 2012, he was such like an offensive like minded guy. Kind of, I don't want to say finesse, but he was so like attack focused that he very rarely did that. And I was like, man, he's huge. If he lined somebody up, my God.
He's very nimble.
Yeah.
Especially with the puck on his stick, given his density.
Yeah.
Very nimble. All right. Let's keep the train moving. Let's take it to Detroit. The Iser plan is in full motion, Grant. Lucas Raymond signs 8-year deal by $8.075 million. He's 22 years old. He had 72 points last season, 45 points the year before, nearly a 30-point increase. Clearly going to be a marquee forward moving forward in Detroit. Also, keyed up their anchor on the blue line, Moritz Seider, 7-year deal, $8.55 million. He's 23. He had 42 points last season. He, like I said, the anchor of this blue line for years to come. He will be the leader. I love this deal for a defenseman who's got a very high ceiling. Again, they're hard to find at this age of quality. And Lucas Raymond, just having both of these guys long-term under $9 million, I think that they are proven, and I really like these numbers. I think there's a few guys further down this list we're going to get to that's maybe a little unproven. But for these, I think it's a good value.
You said 22 and 23 years old, respectfully?
Correct.
That's good business by Yzerman.
Yeah, below 9.
Tip the cap.
Yeah. All right, let's go to Utah. Dylan Genther. Before we talk about this deal, I'll let it be known they're playing in their first preseason game.
It's happening right now.
And their first goal was an own goal. Unfortunately, they had the goalie pulled during a delayed penalty, and it was one of those awkward moments where a pass got away from them and it went into their own empty net. So, unfortunately, not the hottest start, but it is preseason. So, hopefully they move forward.
I'm always shocked that it doesn't happen more.
Yeah, I know. The pulling of the goalie in that situation seems like a no-brainer until it's not.
Yeah, we need some sabermetrics to like crunch the numbers. Like, actually,
yeah,
it doesn't involve anything.
Dylan Genther signs 8-year by $7.1 million. He's 21. He had 35 points in 45 games last season. A very high ceiling. He was the 9th overall pick in the first round, I think 2 seasons ago. This is one of those right away, though. Is it a little unproven? We're looking at a very small sample size. That's half a season. Good point per game, but still, you're hedging your bet a little bit if you're Utah, basically counting on this kid's potential. I foresee it playing out for them in a good way, but it is a risk. This is a bet in my eyes.
Yeah, it's a pretty big bet. I'm a little skeptical. I think it's so many years for a guy that I want to see in some high pressure situations a little bit. You know?
Yeah. Utah is going to have that and more this season in the Central for sure, as we discussed. Okay, let's go to Pittsburgh. The man, the myth, the legend, Sidney Crosby inks 2 years by $8.7 million. There's no question this is great business. This has been his number. The city of Pittsburgh owes this man whatever he wants, given the discount that he has given them for 2 decades, essentially. He had 42 goals last season. He's still dealing. He's still whining and dining. The leader of this team. My only question is, does this deal end in Pittsburgh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Likely number for him to get. I think that's so funny. It just keeps happening. You know, the Pens have fallen off a little bit in recent years. That's not the fault of one Sidney Crosby. He is still producing, and it's not even like he's bankrupting the team to where they can't add people. Like, they've just kind of missed a little bit on the roster construction to a point where the rest of the Metro has gotten better and they're on the outside looking in. You're going to get a lot of people around the hockey world being like, one last go for Crosby. Like, come on, like, let's do it. Like, they're still got it. And that's completely fair and justified. And he's a likable superstar that the league needed and the Pens sure as hell needed when he came in there. And him staying in Pittsburgh, it's a great story. But I don't like the Pens, so I don't really want them to be good. And if you disagree with that, I'm sorry, that's just sports. There's teams you just don't like. And I've kind of said it to like we both know a ton of Pens fans. I don't hate Crosby in the way maybe I do other stars for rival teams in other sports. Like he is who he is. I think he's a very he fits that city so well. And I know that's probably a lot because he's just like been there a long time. You kind of take on the characteristics of where you're at. But him going around to season ticket holders at like the day he signed and like knocking on the door to be like, hey, like, thanks for renewing. I'm Sidney Crosby. And then they did like media availability in someone's backyard. Did you see this?
Yes, I did. It was awesome.
It was so funny to me. And that's so Pittsburgh because like I know the house he probably knocked on, like the guy's been like living there since like the 50s. And you know, there's like Iron City light in his like garage fridge. I love it. Like I really love the city of Pittsburgh, but it's just like goddamn, he's still doing it.
All right, Grant, let's go down south. Let's go to Dallas. We mentioned Dallas had a little bit of cap space left, around $6 million. That is all but gone. They signed Issa Lindell, 5 years, $5.25 million. He's 30 years old. He had 26 points in 82 games last year. This guy is a Clydesdale. I looked into his analytics a little bit, his underlying numbers. There's a stat. It's called the Dangerous Fenwick 4, and it's essentially calculating a value via algorithms on how many high danger scoring chances you let up on the defensive side of the puck.
All right.
It's a good stat for if you want to know who's good defensively.
So you're letting in high value moments for the other team.
Yeah. And his having a high number is what you want in this situation. Like he doesn't let up many high danger scoring chances when he's on the ice.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool. I'm gonna look into that. I can get down with that. I like the way you explained that. You did very good.
Thank you. Also, on the other side, he's got someone to pass the puck to outside of Miro Heiskanen. Thomas Harley, 2 years, $4 million. Clearly a bridge deal for the young man, but this is going to work out. He's 23, 47 points in 79 games. Again, a positive Corsi 4 and a high dangerous Fenwick 4. This is good business. Something I noticed about both of these guys too, collectively, you're talking about 3 games missed between two guys. For two staple defensemen, that's what you're looking for, and I got no problem with term there.
I like that. That's something we don't talk enough about, of just like guys playing a lot, being dependable. I think we kind of take the guys that do that, I think we kind of take for granted, and the guys that are kind of always hurt, we always think that like, that'll like fix itself.
It's going to be a bit of a theme later as we get into one of these teams in the Pacific, Grant.
Interesting. Have you got your brother's take on these?
I haven't spoken to him. We'll have to get him back on.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a great bit. Just your brother comes on for 5 minutes. Like, okay, he's going to talk Stars.
Dallas only.
Yeah. It's strictly Dallas only talking points.
The New Jersey Devils signed Dawson Mercer to a 3-year deal by $4 million. He's 22. He had 33 points in 82 games. Certainly a sophomore slump. That was down from 56 points the year prior. This deal was probably made with a bit of grimace, I imagine, hoping for a rebound. Unfortunate time to sign a contract. So they see the value. They see what can be with this guy. Hopefully he bounces back. I do struggle to pay a guy $4 million with that kind of point production. So, but he's young.
Be the going rate for young guys.
Yeah,
we talked about things kind of going up this year.
Certainly. All right, let's go right into housekeeping. We got quite a bit of news to get to.
There was very little for like 3 weeks, and now I think with like camp breaking, it's back in it.
It exploded. So I'm gonna try to get through these as efficient as possible. Out of the gate, a bit of sad news, and we wish him the best. Dakota Joshua announces that over the summer he discovered he had testicular cancer. The tumor has since been removed via surgery. However, he will not be ready for the start of the season, obviously, with the Vancouver Canucks. Unfortunate, he was able to re-sign with the Canucks in the offseason. A well-deserved deal given his playoff performance. I was really looking forward to him. Seemed like he solidified at a minimum a third-line role, if not a second, given the character and intangibles that he brings to that team. So hopefully he's back this coming season and he gets through that, because I know cancer can be a bitch. So
yeah, little tip, all the fellas out there, check yourself. Something we don't talk about enough, but it's scary. So, don't be ashamed of, taking care of yourself. Go to a doctor once in a while. I know all you young guys probably think you're invincible. Probably haven't seen a doctor since you're like physical when you were playing. Take care of your health.
Absolutely. All right, let's go out to Utah. Grant, quote from Utah Hockey Club president: "It's been very clear to us what our fans would like us to be called," referring to the team name. "I'm not in a position or prepared to tell you what that is today." So clear indications here. They know what the logo and the team name is going to be. Maybe at a minimum, the team name will be. So any guesses?
It's got to be Yeti, right?
I would think.
Yeah.
I think that's got to be it.
Yeah.
Potential there to be really cool uniforms. Don't mess it up, because this season's are not good. Okay.
I got to remember what we wanted. I got to go back and listen to the early episodes and see what we were advocating.
It was Mammoth, Yeti,
yeah,
Black Diamond, some random.
That was cool. Yeah.
All right, let's go to news. Big news out of Boston. Grant, what was not on my bingo card this offseason was Jeremy Swayman contract dilemma. I thought for sure this city and this young man and net went together like peanut butter and jelly. I thought a deal. They traded Olmark out. Clear indications. You are our guy. You're going to be taking the bulk of the starts, and we're leaning on you moving forward. Not so fast. They go into training camp. He's not even on the roster. There is no deal done from Boston GM Don Sweeney. He's disappointed to not have a contract done with Jeremy Swayman, but is optimistic they will find a landing spot. I hate that wording, with the Bruins by December 1. December 1, folks, being the final date that you have to sign a restricted free agent, or they're not playing for that entire season. So that's the deadline. I wouldn't even say December 1. I'd say before the start of the season, we hope to get this done. I don't even know why you would mention December 1st. Kind of bizarre to me.
Yeah, it's a little weird just to put like the deadline out there. Dude, I was shocked by this.
I am too. And they're not close, Grant. So initial indications are he now wants $9.5 million, a large increase from his last deal, $3.75 million. The Bruins came to the table offering $6 million. So quite a long bridge to build before we put pen to paper.
It's goes to show you how quick things can change. I mean, just a couple months ago, we were talking about how great the goaltending situation was in Boston. Now we're here.
Man, $9.5 million for a goalie. That gives me the heebie-jeebies.
Ooh,
it gives me the
flashbacks to DiPietro.
It's Halloween time. I'm getting oogie boogies. I don't know. I mean, don't get me wrong. Jeremy Swayman might be my favorite goalie in the league at this point. But this whole situation, I haven't appreciated. They clear indications where the franchise was heading when they traded Olmark. So I don't love how the Swayman camp has handled this. Hopefully they get this done. The city of Boston, that fan base deserves it. Anything else on that? I know it's a big subject.
No, I think you nailed it.
Okay. Small news here. Some updates on leadership. Victor Hedman out of Tampa Bay has been named the captain this season for the Lightning, obviously with the departure of Stamkos. And Chicago Blackhawks named Nick Foligno the captain for this coming season.
Phenomenal move.
Not young gun Connor Bedard.
No, I think Foligno's the perfect guy for the job. And that we talked about I love our 3 men and a baby. I think Foligno was a great captain against here Blue Jackets here in Columbus, and he's been a leader everywhere he's went. Even in Toronto, you get a lot of the behind the scenes footage and locker room coverage. Like Foligno is, he's a very outspoken guy. He's a very interesting personality, and I think that's really positive for Chicago right now to give them a little bit of edge, which they might need. And they have a lot of veteran talent, a lot of like recognizable names. I think Foligno could be a guy to, not that they need to like bring order and anything like that, but like that there's might be some egos. There might be, some guys, to get on the same page might take a little bit. I think Nick's the guy for the job. And
sure.
Again, I don't think Chicago is going to be competing for the cup. I think there's only a handful of teams that realistically can say that that's where they're at right now. But I think he's going to be pushing them forward in the right direction. He's going to understand the project.
Sure. Radko Gudas was named the captain of the Anaheim Ducks. I think this team is a good sampling of leadership away from being a serious threat in that division as these young guys start to get more time. I was curious, though, it wasn't Alex Killorn. I thought that guy with his cup pedigree from Tampa Bay may have been the right choice, but clearly they know more than me. They spend every day with this guy. So in Verbeek we trust, referring to that's the GM of the Ducks, for those of you who don't know
what they're doing.
Okay, Kyle Okposo has retired from hockey. He ended on top with the Stanley Cup run with the Florida Panthers. Good for him. Spent a lot of time. I know he had some time with the Islanders. Spent a bulk of his career with the Buffalo Sabres. Definitely through some rough patches with some rough teams and ended with the Cup. Good for him. Seemed like a great guy, great representation of USA hockey, and we wish him nothing but the best.
Absolutely. You love going out on top.
Okay, some injury news out of Edmonton. Evander Kane is expected to miss 4 to 5 months after surgery that is addressing multiple injuries from last season. This is a bit of a blow, but fortunately they went out and got Victor Arvidsson and Jeff Skinner, who I think are going to make up that second line. Evander Kane, to me, was sliding down to a third line anyways, so they absorbed it with these acquisitions. Hope he is able to return. And
is this one of those things where like he tried over the offseason to like rehab it and then you hit a wall and realize it's not going to happen, so you get the surgery now? I don't know. I mean, speculating on it's not worthy, but it's like the timing of it I found to be kind of like interesting.
Yeah. I don't disagree. I think that Oilers team is going to be just fine, even if he can't return. But I hope he does. Sad news out of Washington. Grant, are you ready for this?
We saw this coming.
TJ Oshie is on long-term IR for the remainder of the 2024-2025 hockey season. He has not officially retired, leaving the door open. Folks, I will say here now, it does not look good that he will ever play in the NHL again.
Yeah, you hope maybe he can have one last go of it, but this certainly doesn't help.
It's sad, man. Yeah. I mean, we all remember Sochi Oshie. I mean, this is an iconic name.
Yeah, that's a career. I mean, he did that. He's played on some great teams. He won the Cup in Washington, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, Sochi was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a career in and of itself for a lot of people. So, yeah, I mean, he's a USA legend for that, and something the generation of guys, especially our age, will always associate him with that. And if you're a fan of a team he's played on, you're really gonna love him. But you gotta. Time's kind of undefeated, and it is a hard game. These guys, do a lot of damage to their bodies, and you hope he's just healthy. And if he gets the opportunity next year, great. But nothing to. If this is how you have to walk away, then dude, I mean, all the respect to him, because he's had a career.
That's well said. Some fun news out of Columbus. Rick Nash was named the director of hockey operations. Rick notably ended his career with the New York Rangers, but spent the majority of it.
Boston.
Oh, he finished with Boston. That's right.
Yeah,
had a stint in Boston, a little time with the Rangers. Majority of that time, though, with the Columbus Blue Jackets to kick off his career. And now he's back. This is a huge move.
Yeah. I mean, it's all kind of coinciding with front office changes. He was in the front office and like player development under Yarmo. This seems like a promotion. So like good for him. We're going to kind of see what the makeup of this is with Don. Is like Don going to be like even a step up. And then, in the future, Rick Nash is seen as the GM. Like that's kind of the way this kind of reads, but it's changes across the board right now in Columbus, excuse me. And Rick Nash is a fan favorite. So we do a lot of wrong in a lot of people's eyes. And I'm not even saying like, I think this is a good move to keep him around, but we got to see how this whole operation changes so that we can put a good team on the ice. Is basically what I'm saying. Like this is cool, but like everything's bigger than this.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Grant, let's jump. Let's start the preseason primers, and then we will correlate that to our last bit of news because it's a chunk and
Yes.
It directly relates to our first team. And so we will segue that after we've discussed the makeup of the Vegas Golden Knights. Folks, this is the start of our Pacific Division breakdown and the last division on our preseason primer segment over the summer. How about that?
We've made it all the way west.
We've made it all the way. Golden Knights finished 4th in the Pacific. Their GM is Kelly McCrimmon. Head coach Bruce Cassidy. They have negative $3.6 million in cap space. I'll say that again, negative 3.6. And that's going to play remember that number. That's going to play a big factor in the news we're going to talk about later on as well. Always Vegas. It's always them. They're always involved in some shenanigans, Grant. Okay. Notable moves this offseason. They signed Ilya Samsonov to a $1.8 million deal. Victor Olofsson to a $1 million deal. They traded Paul Cotter and a 2025 third to the New Jersey Devils for Alex Holtz and Askira Schmid. They traded goaltender Logan Thompson to the Caps for a 2024 third and 2025 third. And then we have the Robin Lehner saga. Going to jump right back to it after we discuss their forwards and their defensemen. Jack Eichel, he's 27 years old. He makes $10 million. Mark Stone, he's 32, $9.5 million. Tomas Hertl is 30, $6.75 million. William Karlsson is 31, $5.9. Ivan Barbashev, 28, $5 million. Safe to say here, Grant, the forward core is definitely on the back nine. I'm not going to say they're fatigued, but they're going, not in the right direction.
Those numbers are higher than I kind of thought they were. It's crazy just how just time works like this, man. Like Carlson's 31 now. I remember when he was really young and he was in Columbus. But it's the way it works.
Speaking of father time, so again, this is the scoring prowess of the Vegas Golden Knights. 4 of these 6 have had an extensive injury battle within the last 2 seasons. I'm talking missing months at a time. That's significant problems, and it seems like some pretty consistent ones when you're talking about a Jack Eichel or a Mark Stone.
Do you think it's because they're in Vegas? That city's just hard on your body.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the conspiracy.
But hold on, wait. What's the conspiracy?
the cap space, the conspiracy.
Oh, I don't even think that's a conspiracy. I think they are screwing around with the cap. I just been like, Vegas is. If I had to wake up every day in like that heat, and then like any time, like I know Vegas has like normal areas, but I also know that the majority of Vegas is kind of what you think of it. So it's like, oh, let's all go to dinner. It's not going to be a normal dinner. It's going to be a Vegas dinner. And you're going to have people visiting you and being like, oh, we're hanging out. And I know these guys are pros, but they're also like, they're pretty, they're also just human. I don't know. I think it's a tough place to have like it is a tough place responsible lifestyle.
I mean, as I'm looking at these names too, even Tomas Hertl, I don't know how healthy he is.
Yeah.
He missed a lot.
And I'm not trying to say any one of these guys are playing out of line or getting after it too much. That's not even really what I'm saying. It's like, I think it's like a hard city to just be kind of normal in. And in a similar, I feel very similar about like LA and New York too.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. Yeah, I don't think any of these guys are like raging, especially since this is the 8th season of the Golden Knights. Like the players are probably over the novelty of the strip. Like they get it, that's what they're associated with. It's not new to them anymore. Yeah. And I doubt management would have much tolerance for that anyways. But I think my big point here with these forwards, there's some injury concerns that aren't hypothetical. No. I don't think this is a fully healthy core. and it's definitely on the back nine. So we'll see how that pans out. On defense, though, you're looking at some strength. You got Alex Pietrangelo. He's 34, $8.8 million. Noah Hannafin, he's 27, $7.35 million. Shea Theodore is 29. He makes 5.2. And Braden McNabb is 33. He makes 2.85. This team can play defense. And this is the backbone of this team. So even when they have injury woes up front, which they inevitably will, they'll be able to lean on this defensive core.
It's a lot of money tied up with
Grant, so that was my next point. They have clearly sold the farm over the last couple seasons. Of note, they're missing first-round picks for the next 2 seasons. So let's get into the keys to success. What are they willing to trade at the deadline again this year? If anything, will they be active again? There's only so many years you can run that back at the deadline and keep giving away your big-time prospect or draft picks. That's not sustainable over the course of 5 years, and that's kind of where they're at.
No, you're constantly taking like a loan out against your debt. Like you're just being like, okay, well, we'll just acquire someone. And like at a certain point, the bill comes due. And, for a lot of these folks, they're just going to say, we won the cup in 2023. It's all worth it. And I'm not really going to disagree. But when your draft capital like dries up to this point, man, it starts to hurt. We've seen some teams go through this. We've seen some teams get close and kind of bet the farm and not hit. I'm thinking of like Ottawa, maybe like 6 years ago, and they never even got to the cup. Washington did. So I don't know.
Look, especially it hits harder too when you see some of these ages like we've listed, and we're at a day and age with the NHL where outside of the first round, so your first round draft picks, you don't see often guys making it to the league, at least consistently. It's a serious drop.
I think it turns into I would love to crunch the numbers on that, man. You just got the wheels turning, but I think you got to get creative with how you keep your pipeline stocked.
Yep.
And just selling off your draft picks, man. I don't know.
So another key to success here, Grant, they're going to have to lean on goaltender Aiden Hill. He's got a good amount of experience, has been relatively successful in the Vegas environment. I will say they haven't been the most friendly to their goaltenders over the years, to include Robin Lehner. Are you ready for this saga?
Yeah, let's talk it out.
Okay, so he is on the last year of his $4.4 million contract. Last season, he was out the whole year on long-term IR, which Vegas knows very well. When you put, not to imply anything, when you put a player on long-term IR, essentially that cap is not charged to your cap space. That player's contract does not have to count towards your cap. So the theory is you put that player, that $4.4 million on LTIR, now you can go get another player to take up that space that normally wouldn't be taken up. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So this would relieve that amount.
It gives you cap relief. So a team like Vegas at the trade deadline historically can then go trade, say, a first round draft pick for an all-star player. Hey, we've got the cap space for that. Wonder how that got there. Okay. Everyone's tracking. Robin Lehner last played a game on April 20th, 2022. Put on LTIR last season.
That's
a long time ago. So the rule for LTIR, though, is like it's not just a rollover thing. Just because you're on it last season doesn't mean you're on it this season. The rule is all players put on LTIR must take the pre-camp physical, so medical exam at the beginning of the season to establish that they are still unable to play. So basically prove that this player cannot play. He's on LTIR. Failure to do so could lead to contract termination. Okay. Robin Lehner did not show up for the first day of camp. He has not shown at all for this medical examination to prove that he is unable, which now leaves the door wide open for all this speculation, these conspiracies. What is going on? Why didn't he show up? Was this a personal thing? Is this a team thing? The questions have not been answered, and that's the problem. They haven't been transparent. According to several sources within the Golden Knights organization, everyone involved knew Leonard would not be there. Now the NHL Players Association, and Vegas are, quote, working on a solution, whatever that means. Robin Leonard then went on record this past week. All I can say at this time is everyone who knows why I couldn't be there. All I can say at this time is everyone knows why I couldn't be there. I am waiting calmly for things to get sorted out. That's a lot.
Yeah. And you know, let's talk about it. This is a guy that we've known has had his issues in the past. He's been very kind of open about his sobriety and kind of the journey that he's been on. So like, I think when anytime his name is in the news, people kind of suspect the worst in a way, and just think, oh, like something bad must be happening. Like I don't really get the impression that this is linked to any of his issues.
You think this is a team?
I kind of think. I mean, if we're really gonna like speculate, which I'm hesitant to do, considering it's early days of training camp, it's the Golden Knights, it's a guy who has been through a lot and has been very open about it, and I think being open about it kind of has helped the league with stigmas with things like addiction. So I do give him credit for that. So I worry, but like I think this is the Golden Knights to a degree figuring out that like their accounting does not pencil out, and they got to figure out a way to, make those numbers add up. And he might be a guy who is expendable both financially and play. So it might, he kind of, everything I'm reading is like, okay, he says that the issues are unique. It's complicated. He says, I want this just to get sorted out. So like that phrase, I want this to get sorted out, kind of makes it seem like his contract or his ability to play is kind of like out of his hands. It's not like he's saying, hey, I have to figure my stuff out. He says like, this needs to get sorted out. Everyone that knows what the deal is knows what the deal is. So it seems like it's like, hey, if it's a need to know basis between like agent, union, and team. So I don't know.
Grant, here we are again with this team, and this is why they drive me crazy. There's no transparency. All it would take is a little transparency and honesty, and you could put this aside, and the Vegas Golden Knights could move forward with their training camp. But now we're stuck in all this.
Robin Leonard could move ahead
exactly
with the season.
Well, there's probably something to that, Grant. It's probably being told not to. It's
no
secret.
Not even doing the medical. Not even doing that. That's crazy.
The last these seasons, Vegas has exploited long-term IR, whether it was honest or not. They had Mark Stone on LTIR going into the playoffs so that they could get that cap relief, which gave them the flexibility to then go acquire guys like Tomas Hertl and Noah Hannafin at the deadlines. Those are just examples. But it's been 3 seasons in a row when they've done this, putting them in this spotlight of speculation. And then, oh, lo and behold, Mark Stone's healthy first day of the playoffs. Imagine that. So here we are again with this. There's no transparency to this situation. And the number from the very beginning, when we started talking about the Knights, they are negative $3.6 million in cap space, which means they have to find relief somewhere. They do not value Robin Leonard. The guy didn't play last year. If I'm Kelly McCrimmon, damn well he's probably having conversations. Hey, Robin, probably don't even bother showing up this year. Let's just go ahead and say that you're not healthy because, frankly, we don't want to pay you 4.4. You're not going to play anyways. And now we're above the cap. We're above zero. Now we can play.
Yeah. I don't know. I really just hope there's nothing serious beneath the surface. And if he's able to help a team, we've talked this whole summer about the teams that might need goalie help. Like he's a little older and he's had some injury. Like anytime a goalie has like hip issues, dude, like that's a huge red flag for me. But if he can still play a year or two, like by all means, man, like let's get him on a team. But this was really weird. This was weird in a way that like we don't usually, like I don't even have like a frame of reference for this.
Yeah, it's super weird. And we're sitting here, wondering with all these questions because there's no transparency. That's why it's so weird. And that's why people get so fed up with this franchise. It's disrespectful to the league, in my opinion, and I wish that they would have better business practices. That's just my opinion. Again, we don't know the truth, so until we do, I don't want to sit here and claim, oh, Kelly McCrimmon is doing this. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I am saying they're not handling this very well. With all this said, I've got them finishing 5th in the Pacific. I do think there's going to be a couple teams that get better in this division. I don't want to ruin my surprises. I do think there's a couple teams that are already solidified. They're going to come first and second.
They were 4th last year with 98 points. Point of reference, the Canucks were top of that division with 109. The Kings had 98. So the Knights were right there. In terms of like playoff line, like they were kind of right there. Really, but the Blues were the team outside of it. They were a few points ahead of them.
Yeah,
I think 5th is probably.
It might be a little low. Frankly, I don't want to ruin my surprise, but I've got a dark horse team that I'm hedging my bet. So I've got to think this through on where I'm going to place each team. And Grant, if you just scroll down on the script, you'll be able to see.
We'll talk. I would probably keep them around 4 or 3, but I'm not as much of a risk taker as Trent is.
Yeah. So with that, I want to be consistent in all my predictions. I think that there is, outside of all this, this drama, these sagas off the ice that seem to surround this team every season, I think there's some, not question marks on the forward core. There's clearly talent. I mean, these guys are world class, but there's got to be at least a fear that they're all going to be able to play a game together, seeing as they've all suffered from injuries over the last couple of seasons. So we'll see how it goes. Okay, let's move on further up Northwest, Grant. Let's talk about the Seattle Kraken, our cement wielders. They finished 6th in the Pacific Division. GM Ron Francis, head coach Dan Bylsma, long history with the Pittsburgh Penguins and USA Hockey alike. They currently have $4,000 in cap space, and as we discussed last weekend, it's because they committed big term and big money to some names this offseason. The notable moves: they signed Adam Larson, 4 years, $5.25 million. Eli Tolvanen, 2 year, $3.48 million. I think that's their best bit of business all offseason. Signed Chandler Stevenson, 7 years, $6.25 million. Matty Beniers, 7 by $7.14. Brandon Montour, 7 by $7.14. Here's the deal I don't like. They traded Brian Dumoulin to the Anaheim Ducks for a 4th-round pick. I don't love it. I think Dumoulin is a guy who you could have signed for a lower value and for a blue line that could probably use a bit of a boost here. But we'll talk about it. I like Brian Dumoulin. I thought he brought a lot of good value to Pittsburgh for a long time. Excited to see what he does in Anaheim now. Notable forwards. We just talked about all these deals. They feel very current, Grant, because I know we just discussed a lot of them.
Yeah.
And
we've talked a lot of Seattle.
We have gone on record saying we are selling stock in this Seattle Kraken offseason, not because particularly dislike for any of these players, just
I like a lot of these
but overvalued with their contract valuations.
I love Oliver Bjorkstrand. I like Jordan Everly. I like Brandon Tanev.
I do too.
I think these guys are really good.
Yeah.
And I like the way they're very balanced.
Extremely.
But
let's talk about some of these cap hits right here.
Yeah. This is the part.
Matty Beniers is 21. Chandler, we just talked about his deal. Stevenson is 30. Just reference his deal. Jaden Schwartz is 32. He makes $5.5 million. Burakovsky is 29, $5.5 million. Oliver Bjorkstrand, he's 29, makes 5.4. Yanni Gord is 32. He makes 5.17. You're looking. There's not one forward,
like a 4th line center.
There's not one forward on here that makes over $8 million, and all of these guys are middle 6 guys. They can all play. They're all good. Like you said, very balanced, and that gives them depth. And I know that makes them a little difficult to play against. The problem they've ran into, Grant, as you can see, there's a reason not one of these guys is paid over $8 million. They've suffered to score. They were 29th in goals for this season with 2.61. That has to improve. And a lot of that is going to depend on Matty Beniers, who is their premier forward at this point. He's not a blue. He's not a blue chip prospect anymore. He had a sophomore slump. That's no secret. If they're going to improve offensively, it's going to largely hinge on him.
Yeah. What more can we say at this point? It's interesting. It's a certain way of building your team that not a lot of teams can do it because they got to be built from scratch, but they have no cap space for the foreseeable future. So I think this is like what we're seeing this Kraken team is kind of what we're going to have for a while.
That's my issue. And you just nailed it, Grant. That's my main criticism. Like we said, this forward core, honestly, I kind of envy their ability to have this much balance across at least 3 lines of forwards. The problem is, like you just said, they have put themselves in cement now with the term and the money that they signed this offseason with guys who I think they were overvalued a little bit with the numbers that they were given. Let's talk about their blue line really quick. Brandon Montour is 30. Vince Dunn, he's 27, $7.35 million.
I think you like him because you guys have the same name.
I love him, not just because of that. I think he's a leader. He can fly out there. He throws the body around. He's very athletic.
He's so fast.
He's an athlete.
So fast.
Jamie Alexiak, he's 31, $4.6 million. Huge. And Adam Larson, 31. We discussed his deal. Their defense was not the problem last year. They were 9th in goals against average with 2.83. Also, what that tells me, you got a decent enough blue line. I still wish they would have kept Brian Dumoulin, but clearly, as I say that, I'm realizing now that doesn't even make sense because they didn't have the cap space for it. But I think their forwards also play great team defense. I don't necessarily think that overall metric, 9th in the league defensively, is a reflection of their goaltending and blue line. I think their forwards as a team, I think they play great team defense.
Yeah, I agree.
Grubauer, he's 30.
They're fun to have in the league. I like Seattle being like on the schedule.
I do love their uniforms. I think they're sharp.
Rena's pretty cool. It hits.
It does. And Seattle's done a really nice job as a city with generally similar color schemes between the Kraken, the Seahawks, and the Mariners.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, some small nuances. Like the Kraken don't have like the piercing lime green like the Seahawks do, but every one of them has that like palette of teal blue.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah. So it's good. It's uniform. Across the city. So with that, they've got a good goaltender, Philip Grubauer. He's decent. He needs to improve. He had .890 save percentage last season. Definitely declined, but they have a great backup in Joey Decord. So they've got an insurance policy. Pretty sure he played that outdoor game last season. I digress. My prediction for them in the Pacific, I've got them 6 right now behind Vegas. But like you said, I could totally see them jumping up to 5th. Maybe even 4th. The Pacific this year is going to be tough. I think that of any other division is going to see so much flexibility, and it's I
also think that it's going to be the division where the gap between like the 2nd place team and the 6th place team is just like a couple wins.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be very tight. I think you could be like, oh yeah, they were 5th or 6th in the division. It's like, oh, off year. It's like, well, if the puck bounces a couple of different ways, they're in the wild card. I don't think the Kraken are going to make the playoffs. I think they'll be slightly better than they were last year, though.
I agree. Yeah, I don't have them making the playoffs. I wouldn't be surprised if Vegas didn't make it either, frankly. I think this is the division of opportunity, giving maybe some teams who have been recognized as a quote-unquote bad team in the league a serious opportunity to jump up and steal a wild card spot. We see it every year, Grant. Last year, the Vancouver Canucks, nobody had that on their radar. Think about their season prior. They were a disaster. And then out of nowhere, Rick Tocchet comes in and Vancouver's got cup aspirations. Yep. So I see other
crazy
stories.
How quick things can change.
Exactly. And that's the other thing. We never see it coming, which is why I'm really excited about my stock tips next week, baby. Are you ready for the hard hats?
I'm ready to go.
Hard hats of the week are sponsored by Leroy's Bar. Located in the heart of Worcester, Ohio, Leroy's establishment has provided cheap pitchers and a safe haven for all of the Fighting Scots of Worcester since 1969. Make your reservations today. Grant, my hard hat of the week is going to go to our man Dakota Joshua coming out of Vancouver. We mentioned it earlier, has the battle with testicular cancer. Tumor was removed. Hopefully that's only good things to come from here on out, and he can get back on the ice and be cancer-free for the long haul. So kudos to Dakota Joshua for being a warrior.
I can't top that, man. That's a great one. I'll go with him as well and just reiterate, anyone listening, take care of yourselves. I know probably most of our viewers probably skew young and to the male demographic. I know it can be hard out there. I went through a stretch of time where I never saw a doctor because I didn't have health insurance. But if you can get things checked out before they become a problem, and a lot of those sort of precautionary areas of health, no shame in that. You got to be healthy. You got to be healthy to put in the work.
Grant, we're going to start calling you Dr. Miller on the show.
Family in the healthcare industry is.
All right, folks. Well, that's going to wrap it up here for us. Enjoy the training camps. Enjoy preseason. Always a fun time to watch.
Here's a tip. Sorry, I don't cut you up. If you live in a town with, I imagine, go to a preseason game.
They're so cheap.
They're so cheap. Ball out a little bit. If you're a guy like me who, typically can't sit close to the ice, do it in a preseason game just so you can say you did it.
Yeah. Couldn't echo that more, Grant.
Yeah.
That's going to wrap it up here. Go see preseason games. Enjoy the hockey. Enjoy the college football. We'll be back to you next week. We're going to be talking about the California teams in the Pacific Division, and we are looking forward to it. That's going to be a fun one. It's so close. We'll talk to you soon. We love you.